I'm Adam Walker, a biometrics consultant, and this is the Pharma Prescribed podcast, where leaders, innovators, and hidden voices in healthcare open up. No sound bites, no spin, just raw insight, one prescription at a time. In an industry driven by data, protocols, and pressure, we rarely pause to ask the human questions. What drives us? What breaks us? And what truths live behind the titles we wear? Today, I'm joined by Poorya Amini, founder and CEO of Risklick, a Swiss digital health company that's redefining how clinical trial protocols are designed. Poorya's journey spans veterinary medicine, a PhD in pharmacology, and hands-on experience managing trials at the University of Bern. In 2019, he launched Risklick to tackle one of pharma's biggest bottlenecks, protocol inefficiency. Risklick's flagship product, Protocol AI, draws on a database of over 800,000 clinical trials to cut protocol development time by 50%, reduce amendments by 20%, and shorten implementation by 40%. Poorya, welcome to Pharma Prescribed. For anyone who's not familiar with you, who are you and what is the mission that you've been on?
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for inviting me to the podcast. That's an honor to be on your podcast. And regarding myself, my name is Poorya Amini, as you mentioned, and my background is veterinarian. And when I was working in the clinical trial units, I was responsible to develop the protocol for the client or coordinate the protocol development for the client. And the way we were doing was the way that the industry was doing for the past 20 years. And I was complaining the way that we were doing because it was really inefficient, messy, and prone to error. And I was just trying to find a better way to do it. And I searched almost interview most of the industry experts to see if they are doing differently or they have a better idea to do it. And what I was told that time that, yeah, this is the way that industry is doing and we all do the same way. But I was not convinced by the answer. I was not happy that everybody just followed the way that we were doing in the past 20 years. And that time was the moment that I believe that there should be a better way to do that. I didn't have a clear idea what's the better way to do that, but I knew that the way that we are doing and the industry is doing is really not efficient. Most of the people were complaining and identifying the problem, actually, but I think nobody had a clear idea what would be the better way. That's why they continue doing the same way.
So it sounds like what you're describing is that the pain of staying the same was greater than the change for you. And having been through that pain of redeveloping and starting protocol design time and time again, there was a drive in you that said, we must be able to do this better. I'm wondering, where does that inner drive come from? Because, as you say, the industry has always developed protocols in a certain way, and you slotted into that process yourself, but you weren't satisfied with that.
Yes, of course, because there were some mistakes that was really easy to catch if you do it properly. But in that way, it was really prone to error. And I had a really bad experience with one trial that we spent 12 months with a lot of key opinion leader to develop the protocol, which I thought that moment that we're going to change the guideline with this trial, that would be best trial that we're going to run and everything is ready. Everybody were so excited to start the trial. And after 12 months development of the trial with the expert all around the world, then we started the study. What happened after 5 months, we had 5 amendments. Meaning the first month, even before they get to first patient in, we had to amend the protocols because we immediately realized the way that we designed the study cannot be run in the hospitals that we want to start.
So it sounds like the issue is around having to effectively develop protocols on the fly and adapt it based upon the patient populations as they change, because you can't predict, presumably, what kind of patients are going to be available or not, particularly in complex clinical trials.
The issue was even simpler than that. The issue was that nobody realized that these patients will be discharged from the hospital after 72 hours. And nobody basically investigate that. Usually the standard of the care is that they will discharge after 72 hours. That's why we put our primary endpoint in the 72 hours. And then immediately when we got the first patient in, we realized, okay, the patient discharged after 48 hours and will not come back to the hospital anymore, because after the heavy surgery, that they cannot even come back to the hospital to give us the blood to measure it.
Goodness, that's pretty challenging. So what is it that Risklick is doing that reduces the friction in that protocol design, particularly around developing and changing protocols, but also more importantly, I think, more closely aligning to the expectations of a clinical trial?
Yeah, first of all, we try to bring the data to the design. And the way we want to bring the data is not the selected data. We want to have a comprehensive data analysis before they even design the study, and give all this data to the expert to know what works, what didn't work, and what is the routine practice here and there. And then when the experts have the comprehensive analysis of all historical data, which traditionally, if now you want to do it manually, it takes 3 to 6 months only to do the systematic analysis of all the historical evidence to find out, yes, these patients, they only stay 40 hours in the hospital, not the 72 hours. And this is the routine practice and the clinical practice in almost all the countries. That's why you can integrate it in your study design. And on the other hand, we bring all the stakeholders to work on one unified process and one unified platform. That means this issue can identify very fast, while when you work in the silos, that it's really hard to identify even this simple issue that cause a huge problem or amendment to the protocol.
So I'd just like to dig into that a little bit further, because as you were describing that, I was thinking about my own experiences in early phase clinical trials. And I used to sit alongside one of the PIs who was a medical writer, and I would build the databases based upon his protocol design. So if I'm understanding it correctly, it's the other way around, where you've got a funnel of data that's driving your protocol design that then takes you forward, but subsequently you're able to pull out data directly from the protocol design. Have I understood that correctly?
Correct. Basically, we want that the expert design the study based on the comprehensive analysis of all available evidence around the world to better understand. And then by connecting the protocol design to the operational system, then we bring also the feedback of the operation directly to the study designer. And then they can integrate all this feedback early enough. They can proactively address the challenges and the issues that might slow down the trial or stop the trial.
Okay, thank you for explaining that. So that means, therefore, that time to final protocol and first patient in presumably is reduced. What other metrics are there that you're measuring as key performance indicators that differ from anything else that's currently out there in the marketplace?
The main factor is the reduction of the time in the protocol development and also the startup time of the study. This is what we are trying to do. And the other factor is the quality of the protocols, quality of the data. Because now the other challenge we have it in the industry, and I can tell you this is across most of the pharma companies, is that they have a lot of data, but from the protocol, from the past documents, but they are all in the PDF and cannot be used even to use the insight for their own new design protocol, because they are all in a non-standardized way, and they are all sitting in the PDF. And I was talking to one large pharma company, and they told me the way that they write only the name of disease, they write it in 8 different ways. Now, just imagine that you want to reuse this information for your prospective study or for any analysis across the organization. First of all, there's a huge effort that to normalize the name of disease that understands systematically all these 8 diseases with a different name are referring exactly to the same disease. And now if you go to patient population, if you go to more detail, it gets even worse.
So was there a sweet spot in 2019 when you came up with this idea, when technology was just in place where you could adapt to getting that information into large language models pre what we know to be in the palm of our hands with regards to ChatGPT, OpenAI, and various other tools? What was it that enabled you to be able to do this at that time?
That time, the initial idea was that data-driven design, how to systematically collect the data, pull the data together, and analyze the data automatically to inform a decision for the trial design. And that time, we were using for that, we were using the natural language processing model, the machine learning model. Of course, still we are using some of those technology because the LLM models, they are really strong, but the use case might be different than our use case, because what we tried to do from 2019 for the first 3 to 4 years is just to clean the data and then create a database which is automatically updated on the weekly basis, and then can link all this data. Most of them were publicly available, but they were scattered in so many sources. Give you an example. If you take an example of a trial, you have the summary of a trial in the registries, like clinicaltrial.gov. You have a publication of those trials in other platforms, PubMed, journals, conferences, and company website, and so on. Then if you go to FDA, you have all related to the regulatory FDA approval, the drug label, this information in another platform, and then you have a clinical guideline in another platform, and there's a lot of platforms that these experts need to search and find the data. And what we did in the first 3 to 4 years is just try to automatically collect the data from all these sources, unify the format, and link this data to understand this publication is related to this trial, and this FDA approval is related to this trial, and so on.
That must have been an enormous heavy lift. And my immediate reaction to you explaining that over the course of a 3 to 4 year period, I'm just wondering how on earth that was financially viable to be able to put all that effort in. It's clearly paying back for you now, and we can talk about that. But at that particular point, you must have been very solid in your conviction that this was going to reap dividends for you, because not many people, myself included, would invest 3 or 4 years in an idea that was at that point unproven. I'm wondering what's in your inner psyche, or what was in your inner psyche at that time that gave you the confidence that it would play forward positively for you.
Before we start doing that in the large scale, we did it some sort of the MVP, and we realized in the MVP that works perfectly. And then we could present that MVP with a small user interface to potential users to see the power, that how the system can work if we link all this data and then we use this data to inform a decision. That was the point that we could convince the people, yes, that would be the future.
That's really remarkable and really impressive. And for those of our audience who aren't familiar with MVPs, I think you're referring to minimum viable product,
Yes.
namely the central focus around developing a tool, what it looks like, what it feels like. And you talked about user experience and testing of that in a small hotbed of interested people. I gather you have now an awful lot of collaborators in big pharma in the tech space. Perhaps you wouldn't mind just elaborating around that a little bit more.
Yeah, the way we developed the tool, it was really a customer-centric approach, because I believe we need to develop a practical tool that solves a problem. We don't want to have just a luxury tool that do things. We need to be practical and need to work in the complex environment of the pharmaceutical or an organization. That's why even from the beginning, when we had the MVP, we just presented to the end user and try to ask end user to work with it and start providing the feedback. And still we are doing the same loop, and still we are improving, still we are constantly collecting the feedback of the end user, what works, what doesn't work, what is the way that they think that should work. And then we try to basically improve it exactly based on the customer need, not to build a solution behind the curtain and then we think, okay, this is gonna work, and suddenly open the curtain and then present it to the end user.
I love that. It sounds like you're describing a very transparent development involving your end users, where effectively they can see the value of their input. I'm wondering if it was very difficult to get that in front of people in the first instance, because clearly you're a highly qualified academic, scientist, and medically qualified, but also you're a very strong salesperson as well. If I may make that point, you are entirely believable and can understand why people would have taken that on board. But I'd love to hear it from your point of view.
I think the fact was that I really strongly believed in my idea. That was the fact. And then I could transfer the message to the people who I was talking to, and that I really believe that's the way it should work in the future. And also try to show them and explain the reason behind. And I think since I was talking mainly to the scientists, and I knew how to work and talk to scientists. With the scientists, you always need to work with the evidence. You cannot say, yes, this is gonna work, I believe it. No, why I believe it. And then I could basically put my reason behind why I think that's lead. And then what it helped me a lot, it resonated, could relate with the pain. Said, yes, today I just spent the whole day to find one publication. And then said, yes, that's what I'm talking about. You shouldn't spend your time, you shouldn't spend your expertise. You're a highly expert person, brain of the company almost, and then you shouldn't spend your time to find the evidence, to search for publication, to understand how to design the query to get the best result, and then start screening the publication to find your publication. It's not you, it's not your task. Your task is to understand the inside of this publication and how you can use it for your scientific design and scientific work. That's why I think one point that helped me a lot, that the scientists really don't like to do all this administrative work or find what they need, and then they saw a tool as a potential assistant, let's say, that can do all this. They are scientific but not related to their job for them.
It's that reduction of burden, isn't it? It's that friction, it's that daily friction, the pain that you described. I can understand why expert to expert conversations really do resonate so loudly, because It's one thing having a business person be in front of scientists and sell them a service. It's quite another to say, I feel your pain. I've lived that pain. Here's a tool that I think might reduce that ultimate burden for you and for your company. So it's incredibly impressive. And when we met in person at the conference recently, I was so impressed by not just by you, but the tool itself. And it was really imperative for me to make sure that we had this conversation because, as I said to you in person, I think the tool is remarkable. I've not seen anything like it. I have felt that pain myself, so I understand it. And I know that plenty of people that I've worked alongside who are in the position of developing protocols themselves would also really value the input of your tool. So that really is central to this conversation as much as anything else. I'd like to just circle back. You had a background in veterinary science, and now you're all about making sure that patients are at the heart of everything that Risklick's doing. How is that looking for the company now you're nearly 7 years on the go? What is the success of the company looking like for you now?
I think we spent enough time to develop a robust solution. At the beginning, we had a vision to make a data-driven end-to-end solution because I think now is a new normal, but that time I also believe that any solution in the pharma industry should be end-to-end because they are already using a lot of solutions which are not talking to each other. And then basically make the effect of this silo even bigger because there is one department that are using this solution, which the other department doesn't know this solution at all and just receive the output of that solution. And now they need to figure it out how to work with the output of this solution to continue the process and so on. That's why we wanted to have it. That's the reason that took us a long time. But in the tool is 1 year almost in the market. And in this 1 year, I see that we are currently working with several large pharma out of top 20 and several biotech. And I see now the reason now the traction goes very fast because then they are convinced on the product side. Before launching the product, we focus again on developing a good solution by working with the end user rather than directly go and talk to the business people and try to do the business development. Of course, it was a hard journey because as investors, everybody wants to sell faster. And then everybody expects that you go to the sales as fast as you can. And it was really hard to convince the people, hey guys, first we need to have a good product and build on the good product. If we just rush to the market and then we try to sell it fast, the people might not appreciate it.
I understand. And just for our audience's understanding, how large is the company and how many people do you employ behind the scenes? Because I'm sensing that you must have an awful lot of very smart people running very hard behind the scenes.
A lot of leader opinion. The future is not a big company. The future are the small or medium-sized company which are very efficient and agile. Because as soon as you become a big company, this process gets heavier and heavier. You cannot avoid that because to manage a big size, you need a more complex process in place. Let's put it this way. And currently we are around 25 people in the company, but at the moment we are growing very fast and we aim to be 45 by Q2 next year.
I looked on your website and I can see that you're advertising for roles at the moment. It's very interesting as well, as you say, because when companies do get to a certain size, certainly beyond 50, I think is when, you need a lot more external administration. There's a lot more management. And I'm sensing that you want to be involved in the day-to-day of the activities rather than be an administrator of people, because that's not what got you into this in the first place. And it's certainly not what seems to be driving you going forward, is it?
It is. I'm going to most of the client conversation as well because still I want to listen to them. I want to learn from them and we want to develop with them and we want to grow with them. That's what drives us. That's why the way that we work with our clients, we call it partnership. And in those partnership that we have a mission together. What is the best solution for you? What is the best solution for your organization? Of course, we have an out-of-the-shelf solution. This is most of the part is ready. You can use it, but how we can make it better for you? And this is what we do, and still getting a lot because this is a really new area. We are trying to make it even better by bringing the collective knowledge of the company and industry to one solution that everybody can benefit. Of course, there are some data which are belong to a client. Of course, that should be there and that the IP goes there. But the collective knowledge the industry is generating should be shared.
I wholeheartedly agree with that. And actually, in that manner, retaining the fact that patients are central to everything that we do, patient safety and patient well-being, it reverts back to that white glove service that I think you're describing on a by client basis, that effectively every one of them feels like they are the most important person in the room, and like they should, of course. But more importantly, that you're learning from all of those different settings, being the person in the room that's able to have those conversations as well. It's absolutely impressive and so fascinating to hear you describe that. If you don't mind me asking as well, I wonder, are there people that you looked up to before you came into this industry that gave you that inner spark and that inner drive that you could be a success in doing this for yourself?
There was a lot of resistance when I started to do that. And whenever I was presenting basically the idea and the potential solution, most of the time I got negative feedback for a different reason. One reason was that everybody believed, yes, the solution should be made either by a large pharma company or by one of the big player of the market, that they have a technology and they can gain the business knowledge, which I didn't agree because I said, yeah, innovation, especially in that level, need to be in a very agile setting and small setting. If you become big, it's really difficult to innovate. The other pushback was that it's hard to change in the pharma industry. The reason that still they are doing the same way that they were doing in the past 20 years because it was hard to change. But I said, yes, I agree. It's really hard. The change management is difficult in this industry, but now is the time because of the technology, because of the acceptance of the technology, because we need to be more efficient. We cannot do the same things that we are doing and just say the change management is difficult. If we can prove that we create more efficiency for the company, more value for the company, I think they can take the pain of the change management and they will go for that. But yeah, we had at the beginning very difficult conversation.
Building on that particular point, change management, I would imagine, is absolutely pivotal to run alongside any implementation of software solution in a big pharma, in a biotech, in any organization, where you're effectively having to sell it to the people whose daily roles are changing, that they are reassured that in the future state, they're still going to have a role and their job is still relevant and they're not going to be put out to pasture or indeed redundancy. That's a pretty hard sell at the moment, isn't it? Because AI has a flip side to it. On the positives, we've got efficiency, we've got large language models, we've got all sorts of capabilities that we didn't have in a heartbeat ago, to today, where we are now looking at the future in the next 3 to 5 years that we can't even imagine because of the exponential improvements that are happening. I'd love you just to elaborate around that particular point, how you see tools that are currently available and perhaps the future of those AI tools might play out for companies like Risklick, but certainly the companies that you're supporting.
Yeah, I agree. The change management is a big part of being a successful solution in the large pharma industry, because as we all know, it's not only about the technology, is just one part. Is a process and people involved need to come alongside the technology if you want to implement a solution successfully in the complex environment of the pharma, and then if you want to see the impact. I think we are lucky now that people are more open to the technology in general, especially the AI. I think it's becoming the new normal of our life, that we all are using some sort of the AI technology to do our task, either even the personal task or the professional task. We're all using. That's why we are more open to AI technology compared to the past. Because if I compare my conversation now to 2019, it's completely different conversation, because that time was really hard, first of all, to convince the people. And then the technology that time was not that strong, especially on the generative AI. They were a really strong model like transformers and so on, but on the generative AI. But now the people are more acceptance, because they feel it, they understand how powerful it is, and they somehow expect that they use it in their routine practice. But on the other hand, since we are talking to the scientists, need to be skeptical. They need to see the hard evidence. You cannot just go with a commercial claim and buy it, because they need to see the evidence. And this is the way we try to generate the evidence. We try to give the confidence to the scientists. You can test it. You can see how it works in your hand. And then you can get a sense and you can get a feeling of that. And then if that's for you or not, I think that helps us in the conversation to sell the product. But on the other hand, I think the difficult part is that learning a new solution, learning a new software, learning a new technology at the beginning sounds difficult and heavy, but we try also not to impose everything to user for the learning, and then we try to onboard them step by step and take their hand step by step, be alongside them, and then support them at the beginning to show them, okay, look, there is a value for you. Of course, it's on the organization level, but for your job, there is a value.
Thank you for elaborating on that. So if I'm hearing you correctly, that support follows through. How do you think AI is going to improve the tools that we are currently using today? Because you mentioned about the conservatism within which we work around clinical research, drug trials, medicine more generally. How do you think that will play out in the next couple of years?
I think in medicine and in the clinical trial, first of all, there would be a limitation on AI, or any technology has pros and cons and some limitation. We need to understand the limitation, and we need to transparently communicate this limitation to the users to understand, okay, it's not magic that I just press a button and AI agent can do all the job for me and then do that. No, they can assist you to do the job more efficiently, or some job they can do it even automatically, but there is a limitation. And then you need to understand the limitation, and then you need to be careful with that limitation. Even for our tool, we have a AI agent that support the users on board of the system. meaning that the AI agent and the first line support can take the hand of the user and show them how you can do it. Just do this, you press a button here, and here is the manual that you can read, and then you can find more information. If this is not enough, I would be happy to connect you with a human agent to have a call. And then this is the way that we try to onboard the users successfully.
That's very reassuring. So you're retaining the human in the loop at all times. You're keeping that oversight, and you're making sure that the quality is maintained all the way through, by the sounds of it.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. At this point in the conversation, Poorya, I always like to finish with a quick fire round. So I'm wondering, what is the one piece of advice you would give to your younger self?
Don't give up on your dreams.
I think it's fair to say you haven't, and you have shown unbelievable resilience in those dreams. What are the top 3 qualities you value most when building a team?
You mean if we want to hire somebody in the team, what are the qualifications we value? Team player, problem solver, and fast learner.
Okay, I like that. I hope you're all of those, by the way. I'm sure you are. What is your favorite thing that you do outside of work?
Sport,
Anything in particular?
skiing, paddle, tennis, not paddling, but the paddle tennis. We go usually with a team to work at least 1 or twice per week. It's some sort of the team activity as well. And yeah, and football, soccer.
Don't start me on that one. What's your team? Are you a local fan?
Yeah, we have a team in Bern that's a Young Boys, and you are in the Champion League several times.
My team hasn't been in the Champions League yet. My team is Brighton and Hove Albion, just for information. They're top half of the Premier League, but they've not been in the Champions League yet. I'm hoping for that one day. And finally, what is your number 1 golden rule in life and in business, Poorya?
Have discipline and respect your discipline.
That's fantastic. I really want to thank you so much for taking the time to explain the background of Risklick, the resilience and the drive and determination that you've explained in your backstory is remarkable. And having had the opportunity to dig deeper into that today, I think our audience will really understand what it is to take an idea and stick with it for the length of time that you have to produce something so game-changing for our industry. It really is as good as it sounds. For all of our audience, it is remarkable. And I said that to you when I met you in person. I reinforced that point again today, Poorya. It's remarkable, Risklick's protocol AI. From what I've seen and in challenging the status quo within the industry within we work, it really is a game changer. Unbelievable plaudits and congratulations for everything that you're doing and you continue to do. And I just want to thank you once again for being on Pharma Prescribed today. It's been an absolute delight and a pleasure to welcome you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the invitation and the nice conversation.